The morning sun hadn't even peeked through the curtains when 8-year-old Maya's world turned upside down. She was curled up in her favorite purple blanket, the one her mom had saved 3 paychecks to buy for her last Christmas, when the harsh sound of sirens cut through her dreams. At first, she thought it was just another police car racing down their street. Living in downtown Chicago meant she was used to such sounds. But this time was different. The sirens weren't passing by. They were getting louder, and then they stopped right outside their apartment building. Maya sat up in her bed, clutching her worn teddy bear Mr. Buttons close to her chest. Through her second-floor window, she could see the red and blue lights painting moving shadows on her bedroom wall. Her heart started beating faster when she heard heavy footsteps in the hallway outside their apartment. "Baby, stay in your room," her mother's voice called out, but Maya could hear the tremor in it. Her mom, Rose Thompson, never sounded scared. She was always the brave one, the one who worked long hours at City General Hospital to make sure Maya had everything she needed. The one who still managed to help Maya with her homework every night, no matter how tired she was after her nursing shift. But right now, her mom's voice was different, and that scared Maya more than the sirens or the lights or the footsteps. There was a loud knock at their door. "Chicago Police Department. Open up." Maya tiptoed to her bedroom door and cracked it open just enough to peek through. She saw her mom, still in her blue nursing scrubs from her night shift, opening the front door. 2 police officers stood there, their faces serious and stern. "Rose Thompson," one of them asked, looking down at a piece of paper in his hand. "Yes, that's me," her mom replied, standing tall despite being much shorter than both officers. "You're under arrest in connection with the death of a patient at City General Hospital." Maya's hand flew to her mouth to stop herself from crying out. This had to be a mistake. Her mom helped people, she didn't hurt them. She'd heard her mom talk about her patients countless times during their dinner conversations. How she always triple-checked their medications, how she remembered their favorite foods, how she held their hands when they were scared. "Please," her mom's voice was steady but pleading, "my daughter is here. Can I at least call my sister to come get her?" The officers exchanged looks before nodding. Maya watched as her mom quickly dialed Aunt Tanya's number, her hands shaking slightly as she held the phone. "Tanya, they're taking me in. Can you come watch Maya? Please hurry." The words tumbled out in a rush. Maya couldn't stay hidden anymore. She pushed her door open and ran to her mom, wrapping her arms around her waist. "Mommy, don't go. You didn't do anything wrong." Rose knelt down to Maya's level, her warm brown eyes filled with tears she was trying hard not to let fall. "Baby girl, listen to me." She cupped Maya's face in her hands. "Everything's going to be okay. I need you to be strong for me, all right? Aunt Tanya's coming to stay with you." "But Mom, remember what we always say. What's our family motto?" Maya sniffled, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Thompson women don't break, we bend." "That's right, baby. And we always stand up straight again, don't we?" Maya nodded, even as tears rolled down her cheeks. One of the officers cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we need to go." Rose stood up, squeezing Maya's hand one last time. "My sister will be here in 10 minutes. Please, just let me wait until—" "Mom," Maya called out as the officers began leading her mother away. "I'll find a way to help. I promise." The last thing Maya saw was her mother's brave smile as they led her down the hallway. She stood in the doorway, Mr. Buttons dangling from one hand, watching until they disappeared down the stairs. The sound of a police car door slamming echoed through the building, followed by the wail of sirens growing fainter and fainter. Maya didn't move from that spot until Aunt Tanya arrived, out of breath from running up the stairs. She gathered Maya in her arms, but Maya stayed stiff, her mind already working. She might be just 8 years old, but she knew her mom better than anyone. She knew her mom's routines, her habits, her dedication to her patients. As Aunt Tanya bustled around the apartment, making calls and trying to figure out what was happening, Maya sat quietly on the couch. She remembered how her mom would call her every single night during her dinner break, no matter how busy the hospital was. She remembered the little notebook her mom always carried in her scrubs pocket, where she wrote down every little detail about her patient's care. Most of all, she remembered what her mom had taught her about standing up for what's right. Thompson women didn't break, And Maya wasn't about to start now. She might be small, she might be young, but something inside her knew she would be the key to proving her mom's innocence. She just had to figure out how. 2 weeks had passed since that terrible morning, and Maya's world had shrunk to the size of her aunt's small apartment. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow, but they felt like they were closing in a little more each day. She missed her own room, her own bed, and most of all, she missed her mom. Aunt Tanya was trying her best, making Maya's favorite pancakes every morning and helping her with homework, just like Mom used to do. But it wasn't the same. Nothing was the same anymore. That afternoon, Maya sat at the kitchen table, pushing around the mac and cheese on her plate, while Aunt Tanya talked in hushed tones on the phone in the living room. Maya had gotten good at pretending not to listen while actually catching every word. It was a skill she developed over the past 14 days, and today it would finally pay off. 25 years. Aunt Tanya's voice cracked. No, that can't be right. Rose would never. Listen, I know my sister. She's been a nurse for 12 years. She doesn't make mistakes with medications. Maya's fork clattered onto her plate. 25 years? That was more years than she'd been alive, 3 times over. Her chest felt tight, like that time she'd tried to hold her breath underwater for too long at the community pool. Maya, baby? Aunt Tanya called out, probably hearing the fork drop. Everything okay in there? Yes, Aunt Tanya, Maya answered automatically, but everything was not okay. Nothing had been okay since the police came. Later that evening, while Aunt Tanya was busy making dinner, Maya snuck into the living room and picked up the newspaper that had been hastily stuffed between the couch cushions. The front page had her mom's picture, not the one Maya loved from last summer when they'd gone to the park, but a serious one where she looked tired and scared. Maya's finger traced the words slowly as she read. She was proud of being one of the best readers in her 3rd grade class, but some of these words were hard. Negligent. Homicide, she sounded out quietly. There was something about a patient named Mr. Chen, about wrong medicine, about her mom being the last nurse to check on him before. Maya couldn't read anymore. But she remembered Mr. Chen. Her mom had talked about him during their nightly phone calls. Such a sweet man, she'd said. Always shows me pictures of his grandkids. Maya remembered more. How her mom had mentioned double-checking his chart because he was allergic to certain medications, how she'd stayed late one night to make sure his new medicine wasn't causing any bad reactions. That night, as Maya lay in her temporary bed, really just the couch with extra blankets, she heard Aunt Tanya crying in the kitchen. The sound made Maya's stomach hurt. She'd never seen grown-ups cry so much before all this happened. Baby girl? Aunt Tanya appeared in the doorway, quickly wiping her eyes. You still awake? Maya nodded, sitting up in her makeshift bed. Aunt Tanya came and sat beside her, pulling Maya close. She smelled like cocoa butter and the lavender lotion she always used. We need to talk about something important. Tomorrow we're going to visit Mom. Maya's heart leaped. Really? At home? No, sweetie. At the detention center. It's like a special waiting place while they figure everything out. But there are some rules we need to follow. As Aunt Tanya explained about security checks and visiting hours, Maya's mind was already racing ahead. She'd been collecting memories like precious stones. Every detail about her mom's work routine, every mention of Mr. Chen, every little thing that might help prove her mom's innocence. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She pulled out her school notebook and started writing everything down, just like her mom always did with her patients. Her handwriting was messy, and she had to guess at the spelling of some words, but she kept writing until her hand hurt. Dear Judge, she wrote at the top of a new page, then crossed it out. She wasn't ready for that letter yet, but someday soon she would be. The next morning, as they drove to the detention center, Maya clutched her notebook to her chest. The building looked cold and gray, nothing like the warm, busy hospital where her mom worked. But Maya stood up straight, remembering their family motto. Thompson women don't break, they bend. Inside, after the security check that made Maya's hands shake a little, she finally saw her mom. Rose Thompson looked smaller somehow, in clothes that weren't her usual colorful scrubs, but her smile was just the same when she saw Maya. My baby girl, she whispered as Maya ran into her arms. Oh, I've missed you so much. Maya hugged her mom tight, breathing in the familiar scent that still lingered underneath the strange new soap smell. And right there, in that moment, Maya made a promise to herself. She would find a way to help her mom. She didn't know how yet, but she would. Because somewhere in all those little details she remembered, somewhere in all those nightly phone calls and stories about patience and careful routines, there had to be something that would prove her mom couldn't have done what they said she did. As they sat together at the cold metal table, Maya started asking questions. Careful questions like she'd learned to do in school. Questions about schedules and routines, and exactly what happened that night. Her mom answered each one, sometimes with a puzzled look, but she answered. And Maya listened. She listened like her whole world depended on it. Because maybe it did. Maya sat on the floor outside Aunt Tanya's bedroom, her back pressed against the wall. It was way past her bedtime, but sleep was the last thing on her mind. Through the crack under the door, she could hear Aunt Tanya talking on the phone with someone from the hospital where her mom used to work. Look, I know there has to be more to the story, Aunt Tanya was saying. Rose kept records of everything. She had this little notebook she always carried. Maya's eyes widened. The notebook. She remembered her mom's little blue notebook, the one with the butterfly sticker on the front that Maya had given her last year. Her mom wrote everything in there. Medication times, patient allergies, special requests from families. But where was it now? What do you mean the notebook wasn't in her locker? Aunt Tanya's voice rose slightly. She never went anywhere without it. Maya's heart started beating faster. She thought about the last time she saw her mom before the arrest. She'd been wearing her blue scrubs, the ones with the tiny tear in the right pocket that she kept meaning to sew up. The notebook always went in her left pocket, the one that wasn't torn. Quietly, Maya got up and tiptoed to her temporary bedroom, really just Aunt Tanya's home office with a fold-out bed. She'd pulled out her own notebook, the one where she'd been writing down everything she could remember. On a fresh page, she wrote, Mom's blue notebook equals MPO uptihant. The next morning, while Aunt Tanya was making breakfast, Maya asked what seemed like an innocent question. Aunt Tanya, can we go to our apartment? I really miss Mr. Buttons. She hadn't seen her favorite teddy bear since that terrible morning. Aunt Tanya paused in the middle of flipping a pancake. Oh, sweetie, I don't know. The police said, please. Maya put on her best pleading face, the one that usually worked on her mom. I can't sleep good without him. Aunt Tanya's expression softened. Well, I suppose we could stop by for a few minutes. The police did say we could collect some personal items. 2 hours later, they were standing in Maya's old apartment. Everything looked exactly the same, but somehow different too, like when you see your classroom on the weekend. Maya went straight to her room to get Mr. Buttons, but her mind was racing with plans. I'm going to check Mom's room for some clothes she might need, she heard Aunt Tanya call out. Perfect. Maya waited until she heard Aunt Tanya's footsteps move to the master bedroom, then crept to the living room. Her mom always changed out of her scrubs as soon as she got home, usually dropping them on the couch before heading to shower. The police had come so early that morning, maybe, just maybe. She looked behind the couch, and there they were. The blue scrubs lay crumpled where they'd fallen. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for them. Left pocket, where the notebook should be, empty. Right pocket, the one with the tear, also empty. But wait, Maya ran her hand along the inside of the scrubs. There, in the lining through the tear in the right pocket, something had slipped down inside the actual fabric of the pants. She could feel it. Maya? Aunt Tanya called. You ready to go, baby? Just a minute, Maya called back. She knew she shouldn't hide things from Aunt Tanya, but something told her this was important. She quickly stuffed the scrubs into her backpack along with Mr. Buttons. That night, after Aunt Tanya had kissed her goodnight and gone to watch her evening TV shows, Maya pulled out the scrubs. Using the tiny scissors from her school pencil case, she carefully cut along the seam where she'd felt the bump. Her hands shook as she reached inside. There it was, her mom's blue notebook, with Maya's butterfly sticker still on the front. It must have slipped through the torn pocket and gotten stuck in the lining of the scrubs. Maya opened it carefully. Her mom's neat handwriting filled every page. She flipped to the last few entries, the ones from that final night shift. Her finger traced along the words as she read. Mr. Chen, 7:15 p.m. Blood pressure normal. Medication check completed. Allergies reviewed with incoming night staff. 7:30 p.m. Called Maya for nightly check-in. 7:45 p.m. Dr. Wilson changed Mr. Chen's medication. New orders noted in chart. Double-checked for allergies. al. 8 o'clock p.m. Handed over to night shift nurse. All patients stable. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her mom had written everything down, just like she always did. And right there, in black and white, was proof that her mom wasn't the last person to check on Mr. Chen that night. But there was something else bothering her. That time, 7:30 p.m., when her mom called her. Maya remembered that call. They talked about her science project, about the tadpoles in her classroom that were turning into frogs. Her mom had been in the break room, eating her dinner, just like she always did at 7:30. If her mom was in the break room at 7:30 calling Maya, how could she have been giving wrong medicine to Mr. Chen at the same time, like the police said? Maya hugged the notebook to her chest. She had found something important, she was sure of it. But what should she do now? She couldn't tell Aunt Tanya. She'd get in trouble for cutting up the scrubs. And she couldn't just walk into the police station. She was only 8. But maybe she could tell her mom's lawyer. He'd visited yesterday, looking tired and worried. He'd given Aunt Tanya his card, which was now stuck to the fridge with a magnet. Maya looked at her own notebook, then at her mom's. Carefully, she started copying down the important parts, writing as neatly as she could. Tomorrow, she would find a way to tell someone what she'd found. Because somewhere in these little blue notebooks was the truth that would save her mom. She just knew it. The law office smelled like old books and coffee. Maya sat in a big leather chair that made her feet dangle inches above the floor, clutching both notebooks to her chest, her mom's blue one and her own purple school notebook filled with careful notes. Aunt Tanya sat next to her, nervously tapping her foot against the carpet. "Mr. Parker will see you now," the secretary said, giving Maya a kind smile. Maya had begged Aunt Tanya to bring her here after school. She practiced what she wanted to say all morning, whispering the words to herself during recess instead of playing on the swings with her friends. The lawyer's office was smaller than Maya expected. Mr. Parker sat behind a desk covered in stacks of paper, his tie slightly crooked and his hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it all day. He looked tired, but he smiled when they walked in. "Mrs. Thompson," he nodded to Aunt Tanya, then turned to Maya. "And you must be Maya. Your mom talks about you all the time." Maya sat up straighter. "Mr. Parker, I found something important." She held out her mom's blue notebook with trembling hands. This was in Mom's scrubs from that night. It got stuck in the lining through a hole in the pocket. Mr. Parker's eyebrows shot up as he took the notebook. His eyes scanned the pages Maya had marked with her mom's rainbow sticky notes, another thing she found in the apartment. This is very interesting," he murmured, reaching for his reading glasses. "These timestamps, and these medication notes. And look," Maya opened her own notebook. "I wrote down everything I remember from that night. Mom always calls me at 7:30 during her dinner break. Always. We talked about my science project and the frogs at school. She was in the break room then, not in Mr. Chen's room." Mr. Parker looked up sharply. "You're absolutely certain about this time?" "Yes." Maya pulled out her phone log paper that Aunt Tanya had helped her get from the phone company. "City. Every night at 7:30. Mom never misses it. And look what she wrote in her notebook. She was with Dr. Wilson at 7:45, and then she handed everything over to the night nurse at 8 o'clock. The lawyer was suddenly very interested, pulling out a yellow legal pad and taking rapid notes. "Maya, this is excellent detective work. But I need to ask you something very serious. Would you be willing to tell this to the judge?" Maya felt her stomach do a little flip. "You mean, in the courtroom?" "It would be different from what you see on TV," Mr. Parker explained gently. "You just need to tell the truth about your mom's routine and that phone call. Your mom's case is in 3 days, and this information, well, it could make a big difference." "I want to do it," Maya said firmly, even though her heart was racing. "I want to help Mom." The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Mr. Parker came to Aunt Tanya's apartment each evening, helping Maya practice what she would say. He taught her about speaking clearly and looking at the judge when answering questions. "Remember," he said, Just tell the truth exactly as you remember it. No guessing, no making things up. If you're not sure about something, it's okay to say you don't know. The night before the trial, Maya couldn't sleep. She stood in front of Aunt Tanya's bathroom mirror, practicing her answers one more time. She had picked out her favorite dress, the navy blue one with white polka dots that her mom had bought her for school picture day. Mom always said you should dress nice for important things. Baby girl? Aunt Tanya knocked softly on the door. You should be sleeping. I'm scared, Maya admitted as her aunt came in. What if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing? Aunt Tanya knelt down and took Maya's hands in hers. Listen to me. You are one of the bravest little girls I've ever known. You found that notebook when nobody else even thought to look for it. You remembered things that everybody else forgot. You're not going to mess up because you're just going to tell the truth. But what if it's not enough? Then we'll know we did everything we could. But Maya? Aunt Tanya tucked a braided strand of hair behind Maya's ear. I have a feeling you're going to do just fine. You know why? Maya shook her head. Because you're just like your mama. And what do we always say about Thompson women? A small smile crept onto Maya's face. We don't break, we bend, that's right. Aunt Tanya pulled her into a tight hug. Now, let's get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. Later, lying in her bed, Maya held Mr. Buttons close and whispered to him all the things she planned to say. About the phone calls, about her mom's careful notes, about how her mom triple-checked everything because she cared so much about her patients. She thought about her mom, probably lying awake too in that cold place where they were keeping her. Maya touched the butterfly charm on the necklace her mom had given her last birthday. Tomorrow, she would be brave. Tomorrow, she would help set things right. Because sometimes, Maya had learned, the biggest truths come in the smallest packages. And sometimes, even an 8-year-old girl could make a difference as long as she wasn't afraid to speak up. The courtroom was bigger than Maya had imagined, with high ceilings and wooden benches that seemed to stretch forever. She sat between Aunt Tanya and her mom's best friend from work, Ms. Linda, trying her best to stay still even though her heart was doing jumping jacks in her chest. Her polka dot dress felt scratchy now, and her patent leather shoes pinched her toes a little, but Maya didn't fidget. She kept her eyes fixed on her mom, who sat at the front table next to Mr. Parker. Mom was wearing a dark blue suit that Aunt Tanya had borrowed from a friend, and her hair was neatly braided back. She looked different from the mom who used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings, but she still sat up straight and tall. All rise, called out a man in a uniform, and everyone stood up as the judge walked in. He was an older man with kind eyes behind his glasses, but Maya still felt nervous when she looked at him. This was the person who would decide if her mom could come home. The prosecutor went first, a lady in a gray suit who talked about negligence and responsibility and other big words that Maya was learning to understand. She showed pictures of medication charts and hospital records on a big screen. Nurse Thompson was the last person to check on Mr. Chen before his adverse reaction, the prosecutor said. The evidence clearly shows she administered the wrong medication at 7:30 p.m., leading to this tragic outcome. Maya felt her whole body go tense. That wasn't right. She wanted to jump up and say something, but she remembered Mr. Parker's instructions to wait. Her hands clutched the notebooks in her lap so hard her knuckles turned white. Hour after hour passed. Maya listened as different people came up to testify. Doctors, nurses, even someone from the company that made the medicine. Some of them said nice things about her mom, about how careful she always was, but others talked about systemic failures and protocol breaches. During a break, Mr. Parker came to where Maya was sitting. You're doing great, he whispered. Just a little longer, okay? Remember what we practiced. Maya nodded, but her stomach was doing flip-flops. She watched as her mom took the stand, answering questions in a clear, steady voice. Mom explained about her routine, about checking medications 3 times, about writing everything down. And where is this notebook you keep mentioning? The prosecutor asked, her voice sharp. Mom hesitated. I always keep it in my left pocket. It must have gotten lost somehow that night. Maya couldn't help it. She made a little sound, somewhere between a gasp and a squeak. Mr. Parker turned around and gave her a small nod. It was almost time. The prosecutor was showing more charts on the screen, talking about timestamps and medication logs. As you can see, Nurse Thompson accessed the medication room at 7:30 p.m. exactly when. "Excuse me," Maya whispered to Aunt Tanya, tugging on her sleeve. "They're wrong about the time." "They're wrong." Aunt Tanya tried to shush her, but Maya kept pulling at her sleeve. "Please, it's important." The judge must have noticed the commotion because he peered over his glasses at their row. "Is there a problem back there?" Mr. Parker stood up quickly. "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but I have a witness who can provide crucial testimony about the timeline in question. She's been properly prepared, although she's 8 years old." Murmurs filled the courtroom. The prosecutor objected, saying something about proper witness lists and procedures, but the judge held up his hand. "Given the serious nature of these charges and the apparent relevance to the timeline in question, I'm inclined to hear what the young lady has to say." He looked directly at Maya. "Would you be willing to answer some questions for us, young lady?" Maya stood up, her legs shaking a little but her voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor." As she walked to the front of the courtroom, clutching both notebooks to her chest, Maya caught her mom's eye. Mom gave her the tiniest of nods, and Maya felt a surge of courage. She climbed into the big witness chair, her feet barely touching the floor. The judge smiled at her kindly. "Now, before we begin, do you understand the difference between the truth and a lie?" "Yes, sir," Maya said clearly, just like she'd practiced. "The truth is what really happened, and a lie is making up something that didn't happen. My mom says lying is never okay, even if you're scared." "Very good," the judge said. "And do you promise to tell the truth here today?" "I promise." Maya sat up straighter, still holding tight to her notebooks. She looked at her mom one more time, then back at the judge. She was ready to tell what she knew, ready to share the truth that had been hiding in a torn pocket and daily phone calls and careful routines, ready to help fix the mistake that had taken her mom away. Because sometimes the biggest truths come from the smallest witnesses. And Maya Thompson had a very big truth to tell. Maya's heart was beating so fast, she wondered if everyone in the courtroom could hear it. The big chair creaked as she shifted, trying to get comfortable. Her mom's blue notebook and her own purple one sat in her lap like precious treasures. Mr. Parker approached with a gentle smile. "Maya, can you tell us about your mom's work routine? Specifically, what happens every day at 7:30 p.m. Maya took a deep breath, just like they'd practiced. "Every single night at 7:30, Mom calls me during her dinner break. She never misses it, not even once. She says it's our special time." "And how do you know it's always at 7:30? Mr. Parker asked. "Because that's when my favorite TV show ends, and Mom knows to call right after. Plus," Maya held up a paper, "these are all our phone calls from the phone company. See, 7:30 every night." The judge leaned forward, interested. "Young lady, do you remember the call from the night in question?" "Yes, Your Honor." Maya sat up straighter. "We talked about my science project. We have tadpoles in class that are turning into frogs, and one of them got its back legs that day. Mom was eating her dinner in the break room. She always eats the sandwich she packs because she says hospital cafeteria food is too expensive." The prosecutor stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. This is just a child's recollection of a phone call. It hardly proves." "If I may," Mr. Parker interrupted, holding up Maya's mom's notebook. "This notebook, found in Nurse Thompson's scrubs from that night, contains detailed records. Maya, could you read the entry for 7:30 p.m.? Maya opened the blue notebook to the marked page. It says 7:30 p.m., called Maya for nightly check-in. She looked up at the judge. "And see? The next thing Mom wrote was at 7:45, when she was with Dr. Wilson. She couldn't have been giving wrong medicine to Mr. Chen at 7:30 because she was talking to me in the break room." A murmur went through the courtroom. The prosecutor's face turned slightly pink. "There's more," Maya continued, her voice growing stronger. "Mom writes down everything. Look, at 7:15 she checked Mr. Chen and everything was normal. Then at 7:45, Dr. Wilson changed some medicine. Mom always writes things down because she says you can't trust just your memory when it comes to taking care of people." The judge was examining copies of the notebook pages now. "Ms. Reynolds," he addressed the prosecutor, "this timeline directly contradicts your theory of events." Your Honor, the prosecutor began, we have electronic records showing. Actually, a new voice spoke up from the gallery. A man in hospital scrubs stood up, Dr. Wilson himself. I've been listening to this testimony, and the child is correct. I remember that night clearly now. I was the one who authorized a medication change for Mr. Chen at 7:45 p.m. Nurse Thompson wasn't even present for the administration of the new medication. She had already handed over her patients to the night shift nurse at 8:00 p.m., as her notebook shows. Maya watched as Mr. Parker quickly called Dr. Wilson to the stand. The doctor explained how hospital records could sometimes show when medications were logged into the computer, but not always exactly when they were given to patients. In fact, Dr. Wilson added, I remember being impressed that Nurse Thompson had such detailed notes about Mr. Chen's allergies. She warned me about a potential interaction that I hadn't considered. That's why we waited for the night shift to start the new medication. The judge was nodding slowly, making his own notes. Maya felt a tiny spark of hope in her chest as she watched her mom wipe tears from her eyes. Your Honor, Mr. Parker said, I'd like to submit a motion to. But Maya wasn't really listening anymore. She was watching the prosecutor shuffle through her papers with shaking hands, watching Dr. Wilson point to something on a hospital chart, watching the judge lean back in his chair with a thoughtful expression. Most of all, she was watching her mom. The stiff, scared look was gone from her face, replaced by something that looked a lot like hope. Maya, the judge's voice brought her attention back. I want to thank you for coming forward with this information. It's not easy to speak in front of so many people, but you did it very well. I just told the truth, Maya said simply. Mom always says that's the most important thing. The judge smiled. Your mother sounds like a very wise woman. He turned to the lawyers. In light of this new evidence and testimony, I'm calling a 30-minute recess. When we return, I believe we'll have some matters to discuss about dismissing these charges. The words didn't all make sense to Maya, but she understood the way Aunt Tanya started crying happy tears, the way Mr. Parker was grinning, the way her mom's whole body seemed to relax for the first time in weeks. As she climbed down from the witness chair, Maya felt different. Taller somehow, even though she knew she was still just 8 years old. She had done something important. She had helped fix a mistake. She had made things right. Her mom was waiting at the defense table, arms open wide. Maya ran to her, not caring about all the people watching. My brave, brilliant girl, Mom whispered, hugging her tight. My little hero. But Maya didn't feel like a hero. She just felt like a daughter who loved her mom, who knew the truth, and who wasn't afraid to tell it. Sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. When the judge returned to the courtroom after the recess, everything happened very quickly. Maya sat between her mom and Aunt Tanya, holding both their hands as the judge spoke words that made everyone around her smile and cry at the same time. In light of the new evidence presented today, particularly the detailed documentation in Nurse Thompson's notebook and the corroborating testimony of Dr. Wilson, I am dismissing all charges. The judge looked directly at Maya's mom. Mrs. Thompson, you are free to go. The court apologizes for this unfortunate misunderstanding. Maya didn't understand all the legal words, but she understood when her mom hugged her so tight she could barely breathe. She understood when Aunt Tanya started crying happy tears, and when Mr. Parker shook her mom's hand with a big smile on his face. Can we go home now? Maya whispered to her mom. Yes, baby girl, we can go home. But before they could leave, the judge called Maya back to his bench. He took off his glasses and smiled at her kindly. Young lady, I've been a judge for 30 years, and I've learned that sometimes the truth comes from unexpected places. Your courage in coming forward, your careful attention to detail, and your clear love for your mother have touched everyone in this courtroom today. Maya felt her cheeks getting warm, but she stood tall like her mom had taught her. Thank you, Your Honor, she said clearly. I just remembered what Mom always says, that little things matter when you're taking care of people. Like calling at the same time every day, or writing everything down, or... She paused, thinking about all the little things that had added up to the truth. The judge nodded. Those little things made a big difference today. You should be very proud of yourself. As they walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sunlight, it felt like the whole world looked different. News reporters were waiting outside with cameras and microphones, but Mr. Parker helped them slip out through a side door where Aunt Tanya's cart was waiting. That evening, they had a celebration dinner at home, their real home, not Aunt Tanya's apartment. Mom made Maya's favorite spaghetti and meatballs, and Ms. Linda from the hospital came over with a big chocolate cake that said "Welcome home" in purple icing. "I have some news," Mom said as they sat around the kitchen table. "The hospital reviewed everything that happened, and they've offered me my job back. With an apology and a promotion." "Really?" Maya's eyes went wide. "Really. I'll be in charge of training new nurses now, teaching them about the importance of double-checking everything and keeping good records." Mom smiled. "I might even give them all little notebooks." "With butterfly stickers?" Maya asked, making everyone laugh. Later that night, as Mom tucked Maya into her own bed for the first time in weeks, Maya had a question that had been bothering her. "Mom, aren't you mad that I cut up your scrubs to find the notebook?" Her mom sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing Maya's braids. "Oh, baby girl, no. You did exactly what needed to be done. You paid attention to the little things, just like I taught you. You knew something wasn't right, and you didn't give up until you found the truth." "I was scared," Maya admitted. "In the courtroom, I mean. But then I remembered what you always say about Thompson women. 'We don't break, we bend,'" they said together, and Mom pulled her into another hug. "You know what?" Mom said softly. "I think we need to add something to that saying. Thompson women don't break, we bend. And we always stand up for the truth," Maya finished. "That's right, baby. That's exactly right." The next morning, Maya went back to school. Everything was the same classroom, same friends, same tadpoles that were almost frogs now. But Maya felt different. She had learned something important, that even the smallest person could make a big difference if they paid attention to details and weren't afraid to speak up. A week later, Maya's teacher asked the class to write about their heroes. While other kids wrote about basketball players and movie stars, Maya wrote about her mom, about her careful notes and triple checking and nightly phone calls, about how sometimes being a hero means doing the little things right every single day. And at the bottom of her paper, she drew a butterfly, just like the sticker on the blue notebook that had changed everything. Because sometimes the biggest truths are found in the smallest details. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who bend but don't break. And sometimes, just sometimes, an 8-year-old girl with a sharp memory and a brave heart can help justice find its way home.